available for their entire 2020 Cup group stage. The all-rounder is not yet ready to return to action, despite initially saying he'd hoped to be back for the start of the campaign.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxford.
Well, I can't promise you the wall-to-wall sunshine that we had yesterday, but it's still a nice day. It's a dry day, it's a bright day. We'll have spells of sunshine. Might cloud up a bit as you head through the afternoon, but with light winds, it's going to feel quite nice. Top temperature, 20 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones.
0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Oh, yeah, you all right? Oh, good. 0161 228 2255. Simple as that. That's the telephone number if you want to take part in today's programme. Have your say on whatever's bothering you. The same can be said via, well, it'd have to be in writing, obviously, but via email, radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. And there's always an and, isn't there? And, well, there's two here. 2 ears and 2 hands. I've no idea. There's another ear. Oh, crumbs. 07786. That's the text number. 07786 206 951. That's it. So, what do you think then? Now you've had time to let it digest the congestion charge. They're talking about... Well, they've got a plan. There's always a plan. Oh, Lordy, yes. There's a fantastic plan. I've kind of hedged on the side of being in favour of it, really, because public transport does need a massive injection of money, and this would provide a massive injection of money. A large amount of money would go into public transport in Greater Manchester. I won't call it enthusiasm, because I was like a match standing on the red end, which is appropriate for me, isn't it? It would just take a little flick to knock me in either direction, and at the moment, the flick that's knocking me against it is the fact that one of the things that will happen, according to the Evening News Digest of it all, is that the Lee busway will be installed, effectively, to all intents and purposes, along the East Lancashire Road, rather knackering the East Lancashire Road for cars. Not that it takes much knackering. It's already a bit tricky. But there you are. That's one downside to it. But if you look at the map, if you haven't got a copy of it, it's there on the Evening News. If you have a look at it on page 2 and 3 of the Evening News, it really is, if it all came to pass, an extraordinarily large, should we say, system, travelling the whole of Greater Manchester, Orwich, Goulburn, Blackrod. Goulburn doesn't get much out of it because they're in an odd place, I suppose, but it goes Manchester Airport's involved. All sorts of things. I mean, well, I don't know. Now you've had time to think about it, what conclusions have you come to? Are you in favour or are you agin? And the other story in the news this morning is one that crops up from time to time, and that is the closure of post offices. And when you first hear that story, you think, oh, they're going to close our post office. And then you think, well, when did I last go? When did I last go to the post office? Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember the last time I went to the post office when I could not have gone elsewhere. That's the important thing. If I wanted stamps, well, I usually buy my stamps, buy 50 at a time, because then it saves faffing about and you get 50 at a time, and you forget to ask for a receipt if you go and buy 1 or 2 stamps, but if you buy 50 you get a receipt, and all the stamps I use for business I tax deductible, so I buy them in a big lump so that I get a receipt. I go to the post office for that, but frankly going into the main post office in Lee or Atherton wouldn't really be a problem, would it? I mean, just for a few stamps, or that many stamps. And I can't think of the last time I went to a post office when I could not have got the product I was buying easily elsewhere. So then you're left with the idea, well, what's the point of them then? I mean, nobody said, let's save all the tripe shops. Do you remember the UCP tripe shop? Let's save all the tripe shops because, frankly, they give a service. A lot of old people eat tripe, so let's save the tripe shop. Do you remember the milk bar? I just about remember one milk bar in Warrington, but they were all over the place before my time. In fact, Morecambe and Wise' first venture into music was to sing a song called Let's Have a Tiddly at the Milk Bar. I don't know how it went, and I'm grateful for that. But we didn't save the milk bar, despite the fact that we thought milk was an essential product. So why should we save the post office? What does it do that doesn't get done elsewhere? I think it's a simple question. We're going to talk to Neil and Tony in a mo.
Life and Laughs with Eamon and Jimmy.
NASA spent thousands and thousands of dollars designing an anti-gravity pen for use when in the space shuttle. The Russians just used a pencil.
Eamon and Jimmy.
Talking about taking dogs out, Jim, I took my Springer Spaniel out duck hunting the other day. Did it? Didn't catch any, though. Should throw it up, higher.
Eamon O'Neill and Jimmy Wag.
Just hadn't been noticing at the helium balloon factory. I told them I'm not going to be spoken to like that.
If your radio sounds funny on Sunday morning, you must be listening to Eamon O'Neill and Jimmy Wag.
I'll start this off, Chip.
Right.
And you finish it.
Yeah.
Sunday morning from 9.
At BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. If you want to join us, you can. The number's 0161 228 2255. We're starting with Neil in Bolton. Hi, Neil.
Hi, good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, sir. What have you got for us?
Well, it's just about really this haulage business and their grumbles about the petrol and so forth. I've never heard any of them say, well, first of all, they'll have a word with their customers and talk about putting the price up, because we've all been in industry, and at the end of the day, when it's necessary, you have to have a word with the customers. And I've never heard that said by anyone.
Well, go on. Sorry.
Secondly, if it's that bad, why the government could put a supplement charge on all like the airlines do to all people who need haulage.
You actually fail, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, but you fail to take into account something that is crucial in the haulage business and is an important element, and it's what I've said many times, only because someone told me before the penny dropped, and that is that the biggest problem for lorry drivers is lorry drivers. Because if somebody goes to their customer and says, look, we're gonna charge you an extra 15%, will that be okay? Because fuel's gone up 15%. They will then say no, because they know there are more lorries than there are loads, and so someone else, a rival of the person doing the job at the moment, will do the job for less. And that's the problem. Then they don't... Go on.
Firstly, they either haven't got a decent connection with the customer, or secondly, that happens to every business I've ever known. That when you put your price up, you're in danger of losing to somebody else.
Yes.
I mean, that happens to all businesses.
But an awful lot of haulage. I'm not talking about the large enterprises now. An awful lot of haulage is done on a wafer thin profit margin. The problem is that if you don't have your wheels turning round, you've actually got £500,000 worth. I mean, it depends on whether you've got the trailer and everything. But if you've just got the cab, you've got a couple of £100,000 worth of charges, if you like, value, sitting there not working. And so they will cut and cut and cut until they're almost working, and sometimes are working at a loss.
Yeah, true, but I mean, I had a printing business many years ago, and one big account just moved everything to London, and it was similar for me. I mean, these are things in life that you've got to deal with.
Well, yes, but we...
And why can't they put a supplement on to hauliers?
Well, because they won't pay it.
Well,
they would all have to do it for it to work.
Absolutely. So if they're that organised, why don't they get organised?
Well, they're not organised.
And, you know, when you say petrol prices, I mean, what difference does it make, 20p, going on 100,000 tins of beans, going on a 20-ton lorry?
But unfortunately, that's not how they measure it.
I know they don't.
If I've got to get 100,000 tins of beans from London to Manchester, and somebody says, I'll do that for you for £2,000,
Yeah.
and somebody else says, well, I'll do it for you for £2,000, but I'll have to charge you 2% extra for the fuel surcharge, who am I going to go with?
So what you're saying then, we must all subsidise inefficiency then?
Well, I'm not saying we should subsidise it. I'm not suggesting we should subsidise haulage.
If the government gives them all this money, I mean, the government ain't got any money. Where would they suggest the government get it from? Put it on somewhere else, but where?
But Tony, sorry, I'm going to talk to Tony in a moment. Neil, I'm all confused. Neil, the difficulty is that yes, the hauliers could get together and say, right, we're all going to put this surcharge on. We might end up with a discussion going on about whether that would be a cartel, and if it was, then it would be against the law. But let's just put that to one side and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. When the airlines agreed to do that, they've been dragged before the European courts, and one of them was found a number of millions of pounds. So they can't.
They're still doing it.
Well, they're not doing it in terms of all discussing it with each other. They still put surcharges on and take their chance. But the airlines, rather bizarrely, the airlines don't have as many rivals, as many competitors as do the hauliers. You imagine you're a haulier and you can sit at home and earn nothing. But still have to pay your road tax, the debt on your vehicle and all those other things. Or you can go out that day and earn £10.
Yeah. Suppose
they earn the £10.
Suppose the BBC didn't call you in to do these jobs. What would you do, actually?
What would I do?
You'd either get out of the business and look for something else.
Yes.
Or be sensible about it.
Well,
It's like haulage is a bad business.
It is indeed a bad business, but one of the reasons it's a bad business is because there are too many lorries chasing the loads.
Absolutely.
Well, there's no way.
That applies to a lot of industries in the past. There was always too many of a lot of things.
But you see, if all the lorry drivers, all the haulage companies get together and say we're putting this surcharge on, there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that one of them will break ranks and suck up all the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're no further forward.
But no one ever soaks up all the business because the price is right, I can assure you.
Well,
never. I mean, I've just had my car insurance. Listen to this. I was paying £390. There were 5 of them quoted between that and 440. I go on the computer, Liverpool, Victoria, quoted 240.
Yeah.
But have they got all the business? No.
No, clearly they haven't.
Well, I mean,
we shall see, Neil. It's a nice idea. I hope the lorry drivers are listening, and I hope the lorry drivers decide to get together.
Them, I'd be getting out of it.
Well, the problem is, what do? They've got 50, 60, 70,000 pounds worth of debt on a truck they can't sell.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in business with similar problems.
Oh, yeah, there are indeed. I'll grant you that at least. Good on you, Neil. Neil said they should all get together, hold hands, walk towards their customers and say, we all want a bit more. I mean, that's been such an effective policy historically, hasn't it? 0161 228 2255. Tony in Salford. Hiya, Tony.
Good afternoon, Alan.
Have you got time for me to do the news? Because I've got to go to the news in about 1 minute. So if you can do it in a minute... OK, well, you hang on. I'll come back to you after the news. Otherwise, I'll be late, and then, the letters, you wouldn't believe it. The letters I have to answer for doing the news late. But if you're thinking of talking about the congestion charge today, see if you can get yourself a copy of the plan. £3 million we're going to get, more or less. It's going to cost a variety of different... Well, 2 different prices if you want to come in to the city of Manchester, based on 2 rings. The first one just inside the M60 and the second roughly around the inner ring road, if I remember Richard Leese, yes, Sir Richard Leese. You'll pay £2. Now, that obviously it's not going to come in for a good while yet in terms of the charging, but if they were doing it today, it'd be £2. You must make your own calculation to what it would be. It'd be £2 to come into the town at today's prices for crossing the outer ring road, which is effectively the M60, and £1 to cross the inner. So if you're coming into Manchester today from Lee, where I travel in from, Atherton, that area, or if you're travelling in from Rochdale, anywhere like that, it'd cost you £3. Of course, you've then got to get out as well, and you're charged for going out also. So the outward journey, peak time journeys will cost £1 for passing the inner road, £1 for passing the outer road. That works out, by an amazing coincidence, at £5 a day for the longer of the journeys. So from outside the M60, £2 to cross it, £1 to cross the inner ring road, that's £3, and if you're going out, remember this is only at peak time, and then if you're going out, you would then, when I say going out, I mean going outward bound in the evening rush hour. If you were doing that, then it would be a further £2 altogether. So for the longer journeys, it would be, well, it would simply be a £5 a day. An amazing coincidence, as we say. 01612282255. Having a congestion charge at certain times of the day, says Stuart, i.e. the rush hour, will only create another rush hour. All the people coming into the centre will either go out an hour early or later, and the same will apply when they're coming home. The traffic will remain, the rush hour time will change. So we'll have all the same cars, but people will just travel at different times. Well, if that was the case, that, of course, would ease congestion. And that's part of the difficulty. This isn't just about green stuff. This is about easing congestion. And if it eases congestion, then it's a success, surely.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
Greater Manchester Police have revealed the officer killed during firearms training yesterday was playing the role of a criminal. A woman who took out a home improvements loan to hire a hitman to kill her husband has been sent to prison for 7 years. Her husband says he'll stand by her. And more than 600 of the worst performing schools in England are being told they'll be shut down, merged or turned into academies if they don't improve. Manchester's weather dry with some sunshine, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, not looking too bad on the road so far this lunchtime. Everything on the motorway seems to be moving quite nicely. If you're in Lowton Common, though, just look out for a set of traffic lights that are out on the moment on the East Lancs Road, causing a few queues in both directions. Other than that, no major problems. But if you're picking any relatives or friends up from the airport this afternoon, most flights are still on time, but we are seeing a handful of delayed European arrivals. The 11:55 flight from Prague is now expected at 4 o'clock today, and the 12:45 from Milan is now expected in 2.5 hours' time. Call in hands-free if you see anything else. The number is 0161 244 4951. I'm Chris Uni.
You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest traffic through the day.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Tony in Salford, sorry to keep you waiting. What can I do for you, Tony?
Good afternoon, Alan.
Hiya.
I want to discuss the congestion charge. Actually, not the congestion charge itself, but the money that's going to be generated and what they're going to do with it.
Okay.
Now, you had Councillor Jones on the news earlier, and he was saying...
Ex-Councillor Jones, go on.
Yeah, good, well done, yeah.
Yes.
The thing that he said, £3 billion. For the start, we're not getting £3 billion off the government. You're getting roughly half of it.
Yes,
the other half's going to come from that.
Yeah.
Now, Councillor Jones and the rest of them wouldn't have a referendum about the congestion charge. They said they'd done a survey, which 75% of people agreed with it, which I very much doubt. And it'll be interesting to see that, I don't know whether you know, but Bolton are going to have a referendum on it, aren't they?
They are attempting to, yes.
Right, well, that'll be interesting, the result of that. But as I say, I'm not going to argue about the congestion charge at the moment. I could keep you busy with that all day. Now, what they do with the money, they're talking about spending most of it on this big bang for the trams up to Rochdale and Tameside. Now, for years it's got on my nerves that how they're going about the Metrolink from Bury to Altrincham and how wonderful it is and everything. Now, that nearly all of that was there beforehand. There was always a very good British rail service from Altrincham to Manchester, and there was one from Manchester to Bury. And all they did was provided trams and did some renewal work, and they only replaced what you already had, apart from the short section in the middle of Manchester.
Well, you might be correct in the the length of track argument, but, and you are correct in saying that those services existed previously.
And they were better services.
Well, you may argue that they were better services. All the statistical evidence, this isn't surveys, this isn't opinions, all the statistical evidence is that a lot more people use the trams on the lines that used to have trains than use the trains. That's a fact. And it's hard to argue against that fact. Now, you can make all sorts of reasons why, but that's a fact. More
it's
people...
rather surprising because the trains were quite longer. Now, you're probably aware of the fact that the people that actually use it complain about overcrowding. There's usually like two carriages that are massively overcrowded and people struggle to get on and off.
But they, of course,
the charges are quite expensive as well.
But of course, they run more frequently. But I mean, I'm not pulling your nose.
Right. Well,
the reality is, more people use the trams than previously used the railways that you refer to, and the argument is, now it's a bit harder to make this statistic stand up. That doesn't mean it's doubtful, but they say the tram service has taken 1 million motorcar journeys out of Manchester.
Now, Alan, you know that they plucked these figures out of the air. It was
well,
like
I did say...
like the casino in Manchester. Oh, it's going to create 4,000 jobs. It's a load of nonsense. They
well, I did say that I do accept that figure is hard. There is some opinion and conjecture in that figure, so it's harder to satisfy an inquiry on. But the other figure, the number of journeys made by tram compared to the number of journeys made by train, it is incontrovertible. But do go on.
Right, yeah. Now, I'll get to that. Actually, the real crux of my argument is this. If again, they're talking about extending the trams to Rochdale and extending the trams to Tameside. Now, I happen to know that there's an excellent train service to Tameside from either Victoria or Piccadilly, because I had a friend that lived in Stalybridge, and I could get the train at Victoria or Piccadilly and be in Stalybridge in 20 minutes. There was one day when the trains were on strike, and it took me about an hour on the buses. Now, my argument is, these again, they're only replacing these services that you've already got. And that for that money, that your £3 billion, you could have renewed what was the whole of the Greater Manchester bus fleet. Now, when it was Greater Manchester Transport, I'm sure everybody realises it was a much better service. Some services were uneconomical, but necessary. A little bit like the National Service, if you like. But people had a decent bus service, which you haven't got. But for that money, you could benefit the whole of the people in the 10 districts of Greater Manchester. Now, these trams, if they do this Tameside and Rochdale, Oldham boom, are only going to affect quite a small percentage of the people of Greater Manchester. A lot of people, such as in Wigan and Bolton, won't get any benefit whatsoever from these trams. And the problem with trams is, of course, not only are you then going to take out of action a lot more of the roads, and a good example of that is the extension to Eccles. You've got to have all that very expensive track laid, expensive overhead signalling, and it's all got to be maintained. And and the problem with trams, of course, and you find this in the middle of Manchester sometimes. There's an accident, the whole job stops. There's a power cut, the whole thing stops. Because trams, the reason why most people got rid of trams was because of the high maintenance costs. And also, trams are what you call route bound.
Well, okay.
One tram breaks down, and that's it.
Well, first of all, when you say they got rid of trams because they were expensive, you're absolutely right. But I'm not aware, you may be able to tell me, I'm not aware of one city anywhere in the world at the moment that's getting rid of its trams and replacing it with something else. There are a number of cities in Britain, let alone the world, who are absolutely desperate to have a tram service. Now, part of that is fashion, but if you go, we were talking about it yesterday, if you go on the continent, major cities now are getting brand new transport schemes, and it's almost always trams.
Well, my argument is, as I say, now, all right, as you know, I'm ringing you from Salford, and they could turn around and say, oh, they've got a tram in Salford. Amazingly, I don't know whether you're familiar with that area, it runs down Eccles New Road. It's a very low-populated area.
I've been there. I was driving past it just the other day, driving along it.
There's not that many people live there. It's not through the centre. So for most people, 95% of people in Salford, they're not going to walk all the way down to Eccles New Road to get a tram. Salford used to have an excellent bus service, that served the whole of Salford area. and it was one of the finest bus services in the country. Now, you get a skeleton service down the main roads. So my argument, really, to cut to the chase, is that £3 billion should be spent providing a really first-class bus service, which is much more flexible.
Okay.
And the money is spent on vehicles.
One last question, then. You say that £3 billion should be spent on buses. Now, that's an argument for what they do with the money. It's not an argument against the congestion charge, because in order to get that £3 billion, the congestion charge is introduced, because 1 point so many million, I've heard different figures, but 1.2, 1.5, doesn't matter, will be provided by the government. The remainder will be provided by a loan, which the congestion charge will then pay off. Exactly. So your argument, put the £3 billion onto the buses rather than the plan they've got now, still means there'd be a congestion charge. So you're in favour of it?
Well, from that point of view, if they provide...
You've just spent 10 minutes telling me you're in favour of it.
Well, yes.
The charge you're in favour of, you don't like the way they're spending the money. Good on you, Tony.
Yeah, OK.
Cheers, mate. I think he thought he was against it. Turns out he's for it. It's 12:30 on BBC Radio Manchester. I have no desire to change your mind, but Tony seems to have slightly arguing himself into the position of saying it's a good idea, the congestion charge, to give us £3 billion to spend on public transport. We just don't want to go and blow it all on the trams. That's Tony's view in Salford. Colin in Chorlton with you in a second. From David in Crumpsall, good morning, Alan. Milk bars are still with us. I mentioned the milk bar earlier. They're called Costa Coffee, Starbucks and the like, except, of course, on this occasion the milk is flavoured with something and frothed up. All right. Now, what about the tripe shops? Well, 1 or 2 of those are still around as well. It's pointless everyone moaning about the congestion charge. If we don't want it, we need to do something about it, like protest or vote differently in our local elections. But I suspect that the people of Manchester will be lily-livered as usual and do nothing. So says Adam in Burnage. P.S. Why does football get so much coverage on this station? I don't know, Adam, but if it was up to me, it wouldn't. Colin in Chorlton. Hiya, Colin.
Hi, good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon, sir.
What it is, you're quite a knowledgeable chap.
Oh, dear. It's always a bad sign, that, when you start with that. Go on, mate.
No, sorry. No, what it is, it goes back to 2004 when I put in for housing benefit. Anyway, cut a long story short, blah, 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 and we've now come to 2008. In June, and I'll beg your pardon, in December 2006, I got a letter saying that I owed them £73. Excuse me. And I was threatened that if I didn't pay it, I'd be, severe consequences. My daughter wrote a letter in and blah, 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 and heard nothing. I've heard nothing since, till the other day, when I got a letter from the pensions and working pensions, the, what do you call it, working and something pensions, isn't it now, office, saying that they was going to stop £40 out of my pension. Not exactly £40 in one, £37 on the 16th of this month, and then the following month did take £3. Now, I phoned the, revenue and benefits office.
Yeah.
What I was saying before that, Alan, the outstanding payment, what they said that I owed, in 2026 was £73. And now, 2 years later, they've come along with this letter that I owe £40. Now, I've asked for proof, and the bottom line of it is, Alan, they reckon that I was on £10 something a week housing benefit, which I've never claimed, because, how can I put it, when I first put in for it, I phoned the housing in Wythenshawe, and I explained the case, and I said, I'm getting housing. She said, you've no chance, because you get 2 pensions. Are you with me? But anyway, they continue to pay it, and all the time, instead of just say then my rent was £50, and then it was, say, £4 housing benefit, which would make it, I'd pay 46. I didn't. I paid the £50 full rent. Anyway, cut a long story short, this went on and went on, and then I got a letter again saying that I owed £273. I challenged that, and then they'd say they'd made an oversight, they'd made a mess of not taking my wife's income, etc. But what I'm trying to come to, Alan, It's taken 2 years, and now they've come that they're going to stop this pension out of me, this money out of my pension after 2 years. And I've asked for proof, and they said it's from April 06 to August 06.
Colin,
sorry.
Frankly, I mean, I'm happy to listen to your tale.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, what you need to be sat opposite somebody
Yeah.
who can do the calculations with all the figures in front of them and can work out what you, A, should have been required to pay, and B, did pay, and see where the difference is. And that organisation, I'm afraid, is a welfare benefits organisation. The Citizens Advice Bureau or the Manchester Advice Service can also do that, I think.
Yeah.
But you need to sit down with someone. I mean, you might be wary of the Manchester Advice Service. They operate independently, but obviously they're funded by the local authority directly. But the CAB is equally funded by the local authority, but isn't in any way connected to them. But you might want to sit down with somebody with your paperwork. They will then go through the paperwork with you, make a decision about how much is due, and then talk to the authority on your behalf and work out what's going on.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult sitting here to try to get to the bottom of all those numbers and different letters going hither and thither.
Yeah, I know, Alan. I know what you mean, sir. I'm not going to argue. But how can they come along? I mean, I've had no inquiry of them for any money for 2 years. That's what I'm, you know. And then when I do ask where the money is that, you know, blah, 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 that they say I owe, and it's dropped from £73 to £40, it seems to me they're just coming up with figures.
Well, they're not. I mean, let me tell you, they're not. There's not a person employed by the local authority just sitting there thinking, hey, send Colin from Charlton a bill for 76 quid, see how we go on. Their calculations will have revealed that figure. Now, that's not to say that their calculations are correct.
No.
It may also be that when they received the letter that you said your daughter sent on your behalf, when they received that letter, they may well have looked again and said, you know what, she's right, we've made a mistake, it should be 46 or whatever the figure is. That's why I say you need somebody to walk through the calculation with you.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, your position is that you seem to accept that you might, and I use the word might gently, you might owe them something, but you're reluctant to pay them because you can't have confidence in their figures, because A, they've got no confidence in them, they've changed them, and it seems to me that we need to establish what the figure is.
I'm with you, yeah. So who was that, Alan, you say?
The Citizens Advice. Well, there's a thing next to the library in central Manchester called Manchester Advice.
Yeah.
They're a branch of the local authority, but they're not operating as the local authority, if you get me.
Yeah.
And they give, as best they can, they give independent. By that I mean their advice is very good, but they do it independently. Or you can go to your nearest Citizens Advice Bureau. I mean, there's almost certainly going to be one in Chorlton or very close by.
Yeah.
And there, they've got independent people, they're nothing to do with the City Council, and they will work through it with you as well. They have all the figures and all the rest of it. So if you make an appointment with either of them and ask them what you need to bring with you, then they will be able to work those figures and find out just what you do owe. And I remember a classic case from donkeys years ago, where a local authority was demanding 70-odd, actually I think it was 170-odd quid from someone that came into the bureau that I was running. It wasn't me that did the work, but it was the bureau that I was the manager of. And the worker sat down, the advisor sat down with the bloke, and it turns out the council owed him 60-odd quid. and they paid it, because they said your figures are right, you know. Once you get into the miasma, I think is the word, that is the calculation of welfare benefits, it can be very complicated indeed, but they will help you and they will go through it, and they may well come up with a firm figure.
Yeah, but Alan, I know I'll do that, but how can I put it? Can they just turn round and take it out of my pension? Like, are you with me? It's like someone said that I owed £40 to, and they get my bank account and they take 40 quid. Are you with me? You know where I'm coming from?
Well, yes, but...
I mean, it's the law, how can I put it?
The law does enable them to take money from your welfare benefits.
It does.
Well, it's money that the government's giving you, so the government's not going to talk itself into a position whereby it says, oh, we'll keep giving you the money, and if you owe us some, well, that's hard luck, we'll try and get it back off you. They do have the power to deduct it from benefit, but there have to be certain criteria laid down, and again, the benefits agencies...
I'm with you, yeah.
All right, mate. Good luck with it. I'll be interested how that turns out. 01612282255. Colin, for you, Frank from Sale has just confirmed what I said. You need to contact the Welfare Rights Officer at your local council. Well, some of them are independent of, but there you are. He's an ex-Welfare Rights Officer, is Frank, and he says he dealt with cases like this all the time. So there you are. Get in touch with your Welfare Rights Officer. But your Citizens Advice Bureau and indeed your Manchester Advice. I'm not sure whether Manchester Advice do that. I think they do. I've never worked for them, so I don't know. Hello, Alan. Call me a cynic, but could it be a plot that Bolton and Wigan aren't mentioned in the joined-up thinking we all know that the M61-M60 braided interchange is, at rush hour, the busiest in the country? There are no plans for the Metrolink in this footfall area. Could it be those in power can see a cash cow on the horizon? Well, of course, there is already a rail service operating in both those areas, and although Lee demands to be called something other than Wigan, it is part of the Wigan borough, and Lee will be getting its... and I'm dead set against it, I grant you, but Lee will be getting its busway, which is this automatic bus route, instead of having to... It's not automatic, it's just a big gully they drive down, but instead of having to wrestle everybody to the ground on the East Lancs, they'll have a chunk of the East Lancs which only buses can go on, and not just a bus lane, like you have on the roads at the moment, made out of paint. It's actually a designated part that only a bus can go on, because there's a dirty great big gully for the wheels to go down. You go down there, you knacker your car. That'll learn you.
BBC
So they're
Radio
going somewhere.
Manchester.
Headline news.
Greater Manchester Police have revealed the officer killed during firearms training yesterday was playing the role of a criminal. More than 600 of the worst performing schools in England are being told they'll be shut down, merged or turned into academies if they don't improve. 13 of them are in Manchester. And a man's now being charged after a shotgun and bullets were found in a garden in Oldham last year. Manchester's weather dry with some sunshine, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, a quick look at our motorway cameras then, and traffic is flowing freely right now on the M60 and M62. If you're in Stockport, though, just be aware we're seeing a few queues on Ashton Road. Now, we have some roadworks slowing things down near to Arden Road, just near to the Arden Arms pub in both directions. Expect it to be sluggish. Elsewhere, not looking too bad, but in Loughton Common, those traffic lights are still out on the A580. That's the East Lancs Road, so do approach with care. Call in hands-free if you see anything else. The number is 0161 244 4951. I'm Chris Uni.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Delith Lloyd.
Afternoon, 17-year-old Darren Ramsey has shunned a move to the European and Premier League champions in favour of joining Arsenal. Manchester United and Everton have both agreed a fee for the Cardiff City midfielder, but the Wales under-21 international has instead decided his future lies with the Londoners. United manager Sir Alex Ferguson has received another blow with the news that Lyon forward Karim Benzema has admitted he would prefer a move to Real Madrid over Old Trafford. Benzema, who's currently with the France squad at Euro 2008, has been a long-term target of Ferguson's. Real Madrid president Ramon Calderon insists Manchester United have no evidence that the Spanish giants have acted inappropriately in their pursuit of Cristiano Ronaldo. FIFA confirmed yesterday they had received an official request from United to investigate the matter. They accuse Real of carrying out a deliberate campaign to unsettle the 23-year-old Portugal winger. Well, United legend Eric Cantona has urged Ronaldo to stay at Old Trafford, but says even if he does leave, United will manage fine without him.
Ronaldo is the best player in the world today. But United is the biggest club in the world. They won things, they are winning things, they will continue to win things. I hope Ronaldo will stay at Old Trafford, but if he wants to leave, I'm sure United will still win things.
Wigan Athletic have opted not to sign striker Marcus Bent on a permanent deal. Bent spent last season on loan at the JJB Stadium from Charlton. Athletics manager Steve Bruce will instead look to complete the signing of Egyptian striker Amir Zaki. Aldringham captain Darren Tinson has left the club to sign for his hometown team Nantwich Town. The Robins, however, have signed a trio of players. Striker Chris Denham from Droylsden, Hyde forward Dale Johnson and midfielder Anthony Danielic from Leek Town have all moved to Moss Lane. UEFA insists the officials were right to allow Ruud van Nistelrooy's controversial goal against Italy to stand. The Netherlands striker looked yards offside, but because defender Christian Panucci was lying injured or off the pitch, the decision was correct within the offside law. Tonight, holders Greece open their Euro 2008 account against Sweden. Before that, Spain play Russia. Andrew Flintoff will miss the 2020 Cup group stage. The Lancashire all-rounder, who's still recovering from a side strain, had previously targeted the start of the competition for his return to action. But Lancs manager Mike Watkinson says he's not ready.
Well, he's just starting his batting programme at the moment. I think into next week he'll start picking up the ball in with a view to perhaps getting a second team game at some stage. I think that'll probably be more appropriate for him to play a second team game next week or the week after. We'll just have to monitor that progress. I would suggest that'll be 10 days' time, something like that. I'm not quite sure.
Sales, Andrew Sheridan, Charlie Hodgson and Richard Wigglesworth have been named in an England side which includes 11 changes for Saturday's test against New Zealand in Auckland. Matthew Tate is on the bench. And in tennis, Andy Murray starts his Wimbledon build-up when he takes on Frenchman Sébastien Grosjean in the second round of the Artois Championships at Queen's Club this afternoon. It's Murray's first match on grass for 2 years after missing last season with an injured wrist.
Dennis Lloyd, female, explaining the offside rule I heard earlier, which was quite fascinating.
Heather Stott. Not so much lifestyle, more real life.
You're 32 years old, you're 9 months pregnant, and they say you've got breast cancer. How do you deal with that information?
You know, being pregnant, waiting for Harris to be born, just kept us going, really. We needed to think about the treatment and the breast cancer, but straight from the beginning, he was my priority, getting him out and having him. And I think without him, it would have been a lot more difficult.
Heather Stott, tomorrow morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How are you? Excellent. 0161 228 2255. Frank from Woodley wants to know, if he goes round the M60 and jumps off it to go to the Trafford Centre, will he still get charged even though he's only just inside the M60? I think the answer is yes, which might not be unrelated to the fact that Peel Holdings, who own the Trafford Centre, are absolutely dead set against the congestion charge. So the answer, I think, is yes. Joan in Macclesfield has much the same question, wants to know if you have to pay to come back out again. Yeah, providing the times you're going and coming out are what are described as the peak time. So it's all about the time. If it's 3:15 on a Sunday afternoon, or 3:15 in the morning, or even lunchtime, then there is no congestion charge. So it's about the time you use the roads. So more than that I cannot say. Of course, all that will change once it's in. Andrew from Rochdale. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Alan.
Hello, Andrew. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I've just been listening to your radio station all morning. I love your show. It's fascinating. Just not the previous call, the one before that was saying about the cost of this congestion charge is going to be about, or Manchester stands to get 3 billion, 1.5 the government are going to give us and the other half they're going to loan us.
Yeah, well, they're not going to. The government won't loan it, but they are authorising the loan, so we'll be able to go to the banks and get it.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, if Manchester needs the upgrading and we need the trams and stuff like that, then that's fine, fair enough. But just in listening to what people have been saying, that if the government are true, we do need this, then surely once the loan's paid off, we can stop all the congestion charges.
In theory, yes, but, and somebody made this point yesterday, what happens when all the rolling stock and all the rest of it needs to be replaced? Rather like with the Metrolink at the moment, that's had to have some new rolling stock. Obviously, there are repairs and maintenance going along, but eventually you have to have the stuff replaced, so presumably the charge would be used to fund that. I don't know, but that would be... I can't envisage a situation where if we get the congestion charge that it's...
ever going to stop?
Well, yeah, that they're going to say, oh, well, all the bills are paid now, so we can stop it. That doesn't happen. That's not going to happen.
Well, surely running a business, I mean, if you're a bus operator, a tram operator, a train operator, or a courier, I mean, surely that your price that you put in, for example, if you're going to charge £1.50 from Rochdale to Manchester, or £3.50, that should automatically pay for your staff, your fuel, your diesel, the running cost, plus extra profit to compensate for any sort of upgrades or repairs that need doing to your tramline. Isn't that how businesses run?
That is how businesses run, because, of course, what businesses do is they run to make a profit. And so they put money aside for the future, as they are required to do. It doesn't always end up that way. But what they almost all do, in terms of capital expenditure, is when they get towards the end of their loan, they renegotiate a new one, or they negotiate a new one to replace it. One of the problems facing businesses at the moment is those businesses which are coming to the end of their current loan structure, and this applies to multi-billion-pound takeover companies and also the corner shop. When they come to their present loan facility, they have to negotiate another, because businesses operate in debt generally, and when they're going to negotiate a replacement for that loan at the moment, they're suffering very extreme difficulty, not just in terms of getting a loan at the right price, but getting a loan at all.
It just seems to me that, you know, once this congestion charge starts, it's never going to stop. It's going to be an ongoing thing, and
I think you're right in that.
Everything else, and it will just accelerate from the £1 in and out charge to £1.50 to £2, just exactly the same as the petrol. It's just another way of, in my opinion, that they're just killing the working person as a car that needs to get to and from work to drop the children off. It's just, you know, that they just don't realise. I don't think the government know when to stop.
Well, you might be right in that, and you're certainly correct in saying that. I mean, there have been a number of projects, bridges particularly. I think the Severn Bridge is one. I hope they don't sue me if I've got the wrong bridge. But the Severn Bridge, what was laughingly called for a while the new Severn Bridge, the toll bridge over the Severn, you only pay one way. I think it's coming out of Wales because nobody in the right mind would pay to go in. But you only pay one way. It doesn't matter. The revenue from that has now paid for the bridge, but they continue to deduct the charge. Now, that's not the government. That is, in fact, the private company that paid for the bridge. And now they're now reaping the benefit of that investment. So, yes, I think you're probably correct in that the charge will be there forever. Of course, a major political upheaval may change that. We've now got a Conservative Mayor of London, and it is possible that the Conservative Mayor of London will see great political benefit in doing away with the congestion charge. I doubt it, but we'll see.
Well, we'll all pray for a revolution.
A peaceful one, I hope. But revolution, if we're going to be pedantic, revolution means the overthrow of the monarchy. It doesn't mean the overthrow of the government when there is a monarchy. So I'm all in favour of revolution, Andrew. Have a good day.
That's two of us.
Have fun, thank you. 0161228 2255. I think it's about right in what he says, that once the congestion charge is upon us, it is here for, I suspect, forever, but certainly for the foreseeable future. Somebody asked, when will the charge be levied? I don't know is the simple answer. The figure that's rattling round in my mind is 2012, but I've also read somewhere this morning, 2013. But the idea, just to teach my grandmother to suck eggs is the phrase, but to go through it again, the idea is that the money will first be spent and then the charge will be levied. So the idea is that the major construction work and all of that will be completed, and the benefits that are available from the increase in public transport in Greater Manchester will be in situ, and then the charge will come in. You're looking at 2012, 2013. That sounds close, but it's only 4 years, or 5 if you go for 2013. I know the BBC gave itself 5 years to move to Salford, and frankly, it makes it sound like they'd need more than 5 years to implement the whole of the works. I don't know. But the idea is it'll come in 2012, 2013, somewhere in that area at that time. 0161228 2255. You don't have to talk about congestion, but you are indeed welcome to. You can talk about anything. Joseph in Rochdale. Hi, Joseph.
Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon, Joseph.
The usual thing, you've probably got earache, but this time, over the congestion charge. May I just point out that geographically, there's certain areas that will never benefit from these trams just because where they're situated. Do you follow me? Residential areas. Miggleton's one of them. Now, behind me, back of my garden, is the M627. To my right is the M62, and in front of me is the M60. So if I wish to move, and other people, residents in this area, we have to cross these barriers, which are now chargeable like a tariff. And I think this is wrong because we're going about freedom of speech, but now we're talking about freedom of movement. And it's not all about going to work, Alan. It's about seeing people, different age groups, socialising, and all of that will be affected. And that's wrong. I mean, we can't really, with the workloads that the generations are doing now, they're not all 9 till 5. Some of them are shift working, aren't they? You know what I mean? So they're all at different time cycles. And you can't synchronise that into what they want us to do. And I think, really, that this is wrong, what they're doing. And as regards, if it is put in, like that gentleman said to you earlier, shouldn't the charges for travelling on it compensate for the maintenance and, you know, keeping it going? Companies do have depreciation tables under the tax law, and they're able to claim certain amounts of money to maintain both the plant and everything else.
And that may be the case. It may well be the case, but of course it will never be the case that the stuff that we've got now is paid for and we need no further money, because of course the further money will be the continued replacement of the system. You say that you would be restricted in your ability to go and visit people and the like, but you seem to be ignoring the fact that the congestion charge will only apply during the hours of 7 in the morning till 9:30, 4 in the afternoon to 6:30. Now, frankly, and I'm available at those times because of the hours I presently work, I'm available at those times, but I don't go and visit anybody at those times. I don't drive any distance at those times because it's a pig. And I suspect that's the case for socialising. Nobody's going to say, oh, I think I'll just go and see our Mary in Charlton. It'll only take me 2 hours. Whereas if they sit and do nothing for an hour and a half, I can go and see our Mary in Charlton. It'll only take me half an hour. So the idea that it will impinge upon people's socialising, I think is somewhat limited, don't you?
I take the point you're making, but sometimes, as I was saying, people work different shifts and that, and they're not always available at the times that would synchronise with the charges, if you know what I mean, or escaping the charges. So it can't be applicable to all of us. The majority, perhaps, but there will be a great percentage that will have to pay to do certain things.
All right.
And carry out doing it. May I just mention something, Alan?
Go on.
I remember a programme on the television, and it was BBC, where a gentleman went to the Isle of Man, and they had a tram system. And what he was pointing out from the engineering point of view, they had horizontal, heavy wheel inside the rear of the tram. And it was generated by the batteries and when it stopped, at any stop, the wheel continued to turn and charge the battery.
Yeah, the flywheel, yeah.
Yeah, and they said it was independent of overhead cables. And in the programme, it told you that a German town had adapted the idea, put trams back into the city, and used the principle of this tram at the Isle of Man. You know. Mm. And these people seem able to implement these, but here we seem to have such bureaucracy and all this going on. I just don't understand it.
All right, good on you anyway. I don't know why we've picked the ones we have picked. We shall see. 0161 228 2255. You want to join us? You can.
Get your kit off. Masseur Anne Holloway will be here with a step-by-step guide to ease those aches and pains. Tonight from 10 with me, Sam Walker.
So, the congestion charge. It's all over the place. Everybody's got a view on it. If you want to express yours, you can. And Russ from Lee says you pay to go into Wales, you get out for free.
95.1 FM.
DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, a warning to 13 schools in Manchester to shape up or close down. And a man's charged over the discovery of a gun in Oldham.
Double transfer blow for Manchester United.
Well, this afternoon looks pretty good. It's dry with sunny spells and top temperatures of 20 Celsius.
Well, things are looking good on the roads at the moment. All traffic seems to be flowing freely. Just be aware if you're in Salford, roadworks continue on the A666. That's Bolton Road. Do expect delays.
Good afternoon, I'm Faye Rusco. 13 schools in Manchester are being told by the government to shape up or face closure. Ministers have identified 638 schools across the country in which 30% of pupils are failing to get 5 good GCSEs, including English and maths. Critics say that doesn't measure how good the schools really are, but the school secretary, Ed Balls, has defended the policy, arguing there's no excuse for poor performance.
Of the 638 schools, we think about a third are doing really well, strong leadership, they're on track. We don't need to give them too much more to get there. About a third need intensive help, but a third probably need a radical transformation, which could be through an academy. I'm going to now do more than 70, up to 70 more academies in the next 2 years.
It's been revealed this morning that the police officer killed during a training exercise in Manchester was hit by a CS gas shell designed to stop criminals. And questions are now being asked about why PC Ian Terry was not wearing adequate protective clothing. His death's now being investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. A care worker has been jailed for 7 years for taking out a home improvement loan to pay a hitman to kill her husband. Zoe Keneally, who's 44 and from Surrey, was found guilty in April of soliciting murder. The Old Bailey was told she wanted her husband dead so she could claim £33,000 in life insurance. Her husband Timothy says he's forgiven his wife and will stand by her. Now, would it matter to you if your local post office closed? Well, under a plan being proposed by Royal Mail, you'd lose 67 of them, 56 in Greater Manchester, the rest in Macclesfield and High Peak. Richard Linz is the Network Development Manager for Royal Mail. He's encouraging you to think again about how you access the services the firm provides.
What we're really asking people to do is perhaps change their habits a little bit. Look, where do they go to do the weekly shop, or the post office is nearer there? Do they go out to the community to access other services in other adjacent villages or towns? And can they use post offices services there?
A man's been charged after a shotgun and bullets were found in a garden in Oldham. Police found the firearm in a plastic bag in Lidgate at the beginning of December. 24-year-old Gavin Whiteman from Oldham has now been charged with possession of a prohibited weapon. 3 other men arrested at the time have been released without charge. Police officers have lost their case in the High Court over pay. The Police Federation was challenging the government's refusal to implement a 2.5% pay award in full in England Wales and Northern Ireland. The Federation has 14 days to appeal. Speaking outside the court, its chairman Paul McKeever said his members may try to restore their right to strike and there could be more demonstrations over pay.
We don't want to have to go down that road, but we do have a very clear mandate from our members that if it's necessary, we'll follow that course of action. Estimates said there are approximately 25,000 police officers on the streets of London, and that's never been seen before and demonstrates the depth of feeling amongst police officers across the United Kingdom from all parts of the police force. But we'll consider what action we're going to take from now.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Ian Cheeseman.
Manchester United have suffered a double transfer blow. They've missed out on Cardiff's 17-year-old midfielder Aaron Ramsey, who's chosen to sign for Arsenal, and the Lyon forward Karim Benzema has admitted he'd rather go to Real Madrid than Old Trafford. And speaking of Real, their president Ramon Caldron insists that United have no evidence that they've acted inappropriately in their pursuit of Cristiano Ronaldo. Wigan Athletic have opted not to sign Marcus Bent on a permanent deal from Charlton Athletic. Latics boss Steve Bruce wants the Egyptian striker Amir Zaki instead. Altrincham captain Darren Tinson has left the club to sign for hometown team Nantwich Town, and sales Andrew Sheridan, Charlie Hodgson and Richard Wigglesworth have been named in an England side which includes 11 changes for Saturday's test against New Zealand in Auckland.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, this afternoon is dry. There is some patchy cloud around, but we will see some sunshine as well. It feels a little bit cooler than yesterday, and the cloud is going to increase as we go through this evening. But this afternoon, top temperatures will get to 20 Celsius.
Allan Beswick, halfway through your workday.
BBC Radio Manchester.
0161228 2255. If you want to join us, you can. Just pick up your phone and have your say on anything you fancy. Oh, yeah. It's all very good. 0161228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And, of course, you can text on 07786 206, 951. JJ from Wales said she's cross because I said only an idiot would pay to go into Wales when I was talking about the Severn Bridge. She says, shame on you and stop Welsh bashing. And if you don't like Wales, don't bloody come. Well, I tell you what, I'll do a deal with you, JJ. It'll probably make you feel a lot better. I will continue to come, but I'll obviously remember to leave me sense of humour at home, because judging by you, there's not much call for it. No. 0161 228 2255. Perhaps I should have said it in a hobby language like Welsh. David, and another thing. Both United and City are trying to bring in new millionaires. How do we expect them to pay the congestion charge? Oh, come on, it's more than a Premiership footballer can do to pay his parking fees and his... so many of them don't appear to have tax on their cars. Quite extraordinary. James in Littleborough. Hiya, James.
Hello.
What can we do for you?
This congestion charge business, you know, it all... a lot of this started when they took the steam out of railways. And in Manchester at that time, there was a brilliant system at the trams. They scrapped the trams, but the brilliant system that they had after that was the trolleybuses. Do you remember the trolleybuses?
I remember them, but only very vaguely, but I am aware of their existence.
Electric, no pollution. They used to cart about 200 people on double-decker six-wheel trolleybuses. That was the answer.
It was one of the things.
Time.
It was one of the things that was considered.
Yeah, well, they should have done that. And also, you know, the M60, when they built the M60,
yeah,
they had plans that you could go to look at in Manchester. Did you ever go to see them?
I
no,
don't
you
think
didn't.
I did. No.
Apart from that, there were about 3 of us old fogies from Littleborough went to look at this thing, and we suggested at that time why they didn't put a tramway in while they were building all the roads, which was a circular like the M60, and they didn't have drivers like they do in these airports in America. A driverless tram that goes round and round and round, or 2 trams or whatever.
Round where?
The same route as the M60.
Round the M60?
Yeah.
Right.
You know what they said?
You go on.
Oh, we can't afford that. It'll cost it.
But even if they could...
Billions.
But even if they could afford it...
Yeah, but I mean, they were building the roads.
Let me try this on you again.
Go on.
Even if they could afford an orbital tram system, they'd still have to have an orbital motorway because there would still be cars.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have to come into Manchester, would they? On the periphery of the M60.
On the orbital motorway and the orbital tramway, you wouldn't be able to get into town. You'd have to get off the motorway.
You'd have to come in on other things, on other, you know.
So how would it help then? Here's me wanting to travel, I don't know, from Rochdale to Manchester. How would the orbital tram help me?
Well, I suppose it could be made to do, because it is doing now in Bury and all those.
Yeah, but that's not an orbital one. No, James, that's not an orbital tram. That's a tram going into town. We're getting that.
You could have connections to Bury, Oldham, all the periphery.
When you say connections, do you mean tram connections?
Yeah.
Right. So you're not just talking about an orbital tramway.
Well, no, but I
you're
mean,
talking about. You're talking about a tramway in what you might call in a big star.
That would ease the congestion in the centre of the thing for people that were travelling round Manchester in the
So somebody wanting to go from, for example,
Salford to wherever.
Okay, well, let's say wherever. Pick a place. Oldham?
Bury?
Okay. Well, yeah. Bury, yeah, okay.
A bit out,
well, they're all a bit out in the end. So somebody wanting to go from Salford to Ashton.
Yeah, but
they'd get on the tram, wouldn't they? They're going from Salford to Ashton. They'd get on the tram, and then they'd get off the tram at the orbital, and they'd go round the orbit, and then they'd get off that tram, and they'd get on another going into Ashton.
Wherever they wanted to go.
But obviously, there would still be trams going from Salford to Ashton into town.
Yeah, they could make it work.
They could make it work. Of course they could.
I mean,
what they decided was they didn't want to make it work because it were a balmy idea.
Oh, well, maybe so, but
I think maybe so. Yeah, I do as well.
I thought it would have been a good idea with that at the time.
How many, as a proportion of the travelling public, how many of them do you think come to town in Manchester rather than going to other towns?
Oh, I don't know. It's worse out in sticks up here because Littleborough is just a satellite town.
Well, here's a thought for you. How many times, James, have you decided that you're in Littleborough and you want to go somewhere? How many times has that somewhere been, I don't know,
Manchester.
Manchester.
I come to Manchester pretty often.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you?
On the tram.
Right. So you come to Manchester pretty often. How often do you go to Ashton?
Oh, I go on the bus there.
Yeah. How often do you go? Is my question.
Perhaps about once a month.
Once a month. How often do you go to Salford?
I have been to Salford.
You've been? Well, you sound like you're knocking on a bit. I would expect you to have done once. Exactly, so you've done a bit. How about Bury? I'm good on you. How about Bury? How often do you go to Bury?
Oh, perhaps about once a month.
So really, your principal journey is to Manchester?
A lot of it, yeah.
A lot of it, yeah.
On the train.
Along with 20 million others. 0161 228 2255.
Euro 2008 on the BBC. Who will you support?
Spain, because they've got Liverpool players and I support Liverpool.
Fernando Torres they've got. I like Fernando Torres.
Chested down on the edge of the penalty area to Torres. This must be number 2.
Russia, cold weather.
I would support Russia because all the bad guys off the Bond films are Russian.
Berezitsky, well hit. Good save. Pavlyuchenko's there.
Euro 2008 continues, including Spain versus Russia. This afternoon, kicking off at 5 on BBC One.
So there you are. You remember yesterday we talked a little bit, a very small amount, about free speech, and we mentioned Mrs. Robinson, not she of the song by any means. Mrs. Robinson, the wife of the First Minister in Northern Ireland, Peter Robinson. Well, Peter Robinson, Mr. Robinson, has defended his wife over her comments because she said that homosexuality was a complete and utter abomination and that with a little bit of counselling they could be talked out of it. She did. Well, the First Minister, Mr Robinson, defended his wife, who's a committed Christian, after her controversial comments. So she's a committed Christian. So clearly she thinks homosexuality is an absolute abomination. So I would suspect that the one thing she wouldn't be interested in is with a man who spends all of his time with other men and really doesn't spend much time with women, which is very sensible, if you know, because, well, obviously, yeah. Spends all his time with other men, not with women. I can only think of one off the top of my head. Bloke called Jesus.
Allan Beswick, BBC Radio Manchester.
So there you go. Committed Christian. Not committed soon enough, some say. 0161 228 2255. If you've got something to say, that's fantastic. I still don't understand the fuss about the closure of post offices, and no one has yet come on to tell me the one thing that I can buy at a post office that I cannot buy anywhere else. I'd settle for just one of them. Just one thing that I can buy, that I might need or want. I mean, the passport thing, well, you can do that by post. Driving licences, do that by post. Get your benefits, well, yeah, you can get those. That's easy, you get those, yeah. Frankly, what do we need post offices for? Why the heck do we need post offices? Frankly, I don't think we do. I really don't think we do. I do appreciate that if we get rid of post offices, that'll be an awful lot of people who work there, many of them self-employed, losing their jobs. But of course, if you are self-employed and the industry in which you work is no longer required, you go bust. That's how it is. You go bust. Keith in Blackpool says, if you followed that, you're a better listener than me. I think he was referring to the orbital trams. And tripe shops still in existence. Where? There are shops that sell tripe, but they're called butchers now. Tripe shops sold out, but I enjoyed a bit of tripe and onions, or blanched on a good soak in vinegar. Yes, I know. Black pudding, chitterlings, pig's feet, lights. That's lungs, isn't it? Tongue. Have you ever had a good look at a mussel before popping it in your mouth? No, because I don't eat mussels. You can't beat a good snake and pygmy pie, says Keith in Blackpool. Yes, quite. Well, thank you for that. There are still... Well, I'm only aware of one tripe shop, and that's a stall on one of the Lancashire markets, which narrows it down, but not by much. One of the Lancashire markets. I don't think it's Blackburn. It might be Hackett, it might be Accrington Market. Can't remember. Why anyone eats tripe, the Lord alone knows. I mean, clearly, if you can't get your protein any other way, then that's fine. Yeah. Gordon says he's going to buy an horse. Yeah. We could travel by horse back. Which worked, didn't it, for a while? Well, a few centuries worked. But it's a bit... I think you still have the right at the moment. I think you still have the right. Your employer is required to provide you with an hitching rail and water for your horse, I think. Now, there's not a call for it, otherwise the streets would be full of hitching rails. And also full of crap. Actually, come to think of it, the streets often are full of crap anyway. John in Prestwich, hiya.
Hi, Alan.
What
it is, my wife has just had 3 letters come through from Debt Recovery Agency.
Yeah.
It's the same recovery agency, 3 separate letters, all dated the same date, but with 3 separate heads.
Yeah.
One being about £7,500, one being 2.5, and the other being about £600. Now, she's rang them up to see what they are, and they're from a certain bank. One being dated 1990, the other 1998. And the other about 1995. Now, she worked at this bank for about 6 months, between them years, but she's no recollection of any of these debts being took down in her name or anything. So she.
What were the dates again? Tell me the dates.
One debt was from 1990.
Yeah.
The other was 1998.
Yeah.
And I think the other was 1995. One's an overdraft that was left in an account, and the other are for two separate loans, which she's not aware she's taken out at the time. Obviously, she'd have been 18 for the 1990.
In simple terms, and I mean in simple terms, I don't mean this is absolutely guaranteed copper bottom to be the case, and there are reservations around it which I'll explain in a minute.
Yeah.
But a debt that's over 6 years old is almost always not collectible.
Right, well, I mean, that's what I said to her. I said, but she's still, still try and find out what they are and put a closure to it, really, but I had a feeling there was a time lapse on it, but I wasn't too sure.
There is a time lapse. There is a time lapse, and that is 6 years. The technical term they used to use was statute, as in law, statute, barred, B-A-R-R-E-D, as in you're barred from this pub. I'm sure you've heard that more than once.
Oh, many times.
So statute barred. You are barred by statute from claiming the money because it's over 6 years old. So the wisest thing is to write back to the debt collecting agency and say, I have no knowledge of these dates, I have no knowledge of these debts, but the dates you give me are all beyond 6 years.
Right.
And are therefore not collectible.
Right.
Goodbye.
And see what happens after that.
And see what happens after that. I did say there were a couple of question marks against it. One of them's an overdraft. An overdraft might not be a 6-year-old debt because, of course, it stays in situ. But if they haven't notified your wife or the person for 6 years, then you would think they would, unless, of course, they've been trying to find her. But the starting point is, I don't recall ever owing these sums. I have no recollection of ever running up these debts. And in any event, they're over 6 years old and statute barred. So thank you, don't bother me again.
Because she spoke to him on the phone yesterday, and that's basically all they told her was the bank they'd come from and the dates, and if she wanted any more information
to get onto the bank.
Well, they said she could have a statement, but if she wanted copies of anything that had been signed or supposed to have been signed by her, she would have to pay £1 per copy as well.
Well, just say no. It's up to them to prove you owe it. That's
what I thought,
Just write back to the debt collecting agency and say, I have no recollection of incurring any of these debts, and frankly, they're beyond the 6-year time limit, so I've no obligation to pay you anyway. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, excellent.
Because once they get that, they'll think, right, this is going nowhere. What do we do next? Well, we have to up the ante and threaten her with a man with a cosh, or we get back onto the bank and say, this ain't going to be paid, it's out of date.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, appreciate that.
Start with that, see where we go. 0161228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And, of course, 07786 206 951 to text.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news. It's been revealed a police officer killed during a training exercise in Manchester was hit by a CS gas shell. Secret prison files on Moore's murderer Myra Hindley are being released for the first time today, and 13 schools in Manchester are being told by the government to shape up or face closure. Manchester's weather dry and sunny, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
A quick look at our motorway cameras then this afternoon, and things are flowing freely at the moment. No problems on the M60, M62 or M602 heading into Manchester. If you're in Didsbury though, just expect delays on the A34 Kingsway. Gaswork continues around School Lane and Queensway, and we've had a few calls this afternoon saying there's a few queues, nothing too major, nothing to write home about, but you can expect delays of a couple of minutes. Call in hands-free if you see anything else on 01612 244 4951. I'm Chris Uni.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Gordon says, I totally agree with you, Alan. Post offices and their personnel are a waste of time. They are ignorant, unhelpful and non-smiling. They don't know the meaning of the word customer service, and when it goes pear-shaped, you can't even talk to anyone with a brain. Let them die off like the dinosaurs they are. Well, I'm not having a go at the staff, but I'm still waiting. I mean, the place, we're surrounded by post offices, aren't we? I'm still waiting for the reason to keep a post office open. Now, if a particular post office is making a profit, then that's reason enough for me. And if it's because they give a unique service, that's reason enough for me. But what is it? I'm sorry, what is it that I get at the post office that I cannot get easily anywhere else? Now, I do accept that if they close the post office near you, you might walk a bit further, but frankly, tough. That's the real world. Things disappear. If they close the supermarket near you, you'll have to walk a bit further. That's just life. Things don't stay the same forever. If we had to argue that, oh, well, how far have I got to walk, then there'd be a post office in every street. Indeed, every other house would be a post office. So that's not an argument. What I want to know is, what is it that the post office counter service, the post offices, what is it that they provide that nobody else does, that makes them precious and therefore worthy of a financial contribution from our taxes? That's the question. 061 228 2255. I'm sorry, I've just read an email by David who says, Alan, being pedantic, now he says that almost apologetically, but as I've said many times, pedantry is what those of us who are right call, what those of you who are wrong call being right. So pedantic I can live with. They didn't build the M60. They built the M63 and later renamed it. Well, of course, that's not true either, if we're being pedantic, David, because parts of what are now called the M60 were previously known as the M62. So it does get picky, but in pedantry it has to. Peter, this congestion charge is just a huge confidence trick. It has nothing to do with congestion at all. It's just a money-making scheme. Just one example. What possible effect on the congestion in Manchester can someone shopping or working at Tesco at Prestwich have? Absolutely no effect at all. The congestion area net has been spread so wide that there are so many other examples such as above. How long do you think it will take for this charge to raise the 1.5 billion that was supposedly being given by central government? If the council was serious about reducing congestion, they would make the most of the roads in the city centre one way. How ludicrous that the car park called Deansgate is two-way instead of one-way. It's jammed all day long. Making the city a one-way system would speed the flow of traffic and reduce congestion. Alan, making the system one way would require a degree of thought and planning, something in which the City Council have limited ability. Well, your example about a person travelling from home in the area of Prestwich to the Tesco in Prestwich having no effect on the traffic in Manchester is absolutely correct. But as most people who live in Prestwich know, the problem of traffic travelling to Manchester is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And you can't move around Prestwich like you can't move around Trafford, like you can't move around all those other areas when the rush hour is on, because the rush hour is people coming to and returning from, at the opposite end of the day, Manchester. But that does mean that the roads in the area of Prestwich are blocked, not by people making little journeys in Prestwich, but by people making the longer journeys. So, if the congestion charge causes many of those people who are sitting in their cars at 8 o'clock in the morning heading towards Prestwich, if many of those people are then forced into public transport, then the traffic will be less congested in the Prestwich area at that time. Or alternatively, if they decide to alter their journey times, the traffic in Prestwich will be less congested at that time. So the congestion charge will will ease congestion. The question is, value for money, will it be worth it? And he also refers to this tragic accident reported yesterday of a policeman being shot dead in an exercise made me think. Why were they using live ammunition on an exercise? Today I heard on your news bulletin that he was shot with a shotgun. For God's sake, what was someone doing running around with a loaded shotgun on an exercise? After all, it's hard to miss any target with a shotgun. Have the lunatics taken over the asylum? Well, first of all, Peter, it's very hard to hit something with a shotgun. It really is. It's not an easy weapon to use. But that's neither here nor there. Why are they running around with a loaded gun? Well, an exercise where you all run about shouting, "Bang, you're dead," doesn't enable anyone to test your reactions and your abilities in a live situation. There is no substitute for live rounds in an exercise. That doesn't mean nothing happened here. And the shotgun in question, according to what we're hearing now, fired the CS gas cartridge, and it was a CS gas cartridge that hit the unfortunate officer and killed him. And I think there is a very valid question to be asked. I don't know the answer. I have no experience, and there may be a perfectly sensible answer to it. But frankly, what are they doing firing CS gas canisters? When I was a squaddy, we chucked them. We were taught how to throw them like an hand grenade, and you could get them a fair distance, and they don't have to be. Now, if you're gonna lob them through the window of a building, then okay, you perhaps need a better control of the projectile than just chucking it. And I can think of other situations where that is the case. But most of the time, I can't see why you would be firing a canister in that way. But of course, it's perfectly possible that an individual the other side of the window could be hit by it and killed. He was playing a baddie. I'm not suggesting that he deserved to die by any means. I'm just saying we need more information. But I wonder about CS gas canisters being fired. Most of the time, you could crowd dispersal and things like that. You could as easily get them to where you want them by chucking them, like they did in Northern Ireland in the early days. Dennis in Saddleworth. Hiya, Dennis.
Hi, Alan, you all right?
I'm all right.
Alan, post offices, especially sub-post offices, I mean, you said earlier on, you know, you may have to walk a bit further, well, tough. Well, that's all right if you're able-bodied, they're not old and infirm. You know, we can all walk there, but there's certain people that cannot. And the other fact is that these small sub-post offices used to play a very important part in the community, in so much that Granny Smith, who always used to go in on a Thursday or Friday for a postal order for whatever, and all of a sudden she stops coming in. Is she ill? Is she on her own? Or Mrs. Brown, do you know that your kids weren't at school today and were in this shop on 3 occasions, on 3 different... They played a very important part in the community. And if you take those away, we're going to sadly miss them.
Well, I'm not sure that the 3 things you just offered, that they are a social centre, frankly, is enough for them to be funded out of tax.
Well, you know, I beg to differ. I mean,
for example, if we did away with the post office in that area that you just described and put a policeman on the beat, cost about the same. I'm not suggesting that's an either-or, but if there are social needs in that area, then OK, let's look at providing social needs, but let's not pretend that paying somebody to sell bloody stamps is the way forward.
Oh, I don't know. Some post offices did really integrate into the community.
But then, I know,
but...
but...
for bobbies, let them get on with Bobby and chasing crime and not being social workers.
But you're asking the post office person to be a shopkeeper, and you're asking them to be a sort of social enterprise. I mean, frankly, Dennis, the argument you make is one for reopening the washhouses, because that's where that... Yes, it is.
No,
that's where it was done previously.
What I'm just suggesting now, it wasn't a preset thing. It wasn't laid down, they did it. It just happened.
Indeed, it did.
Normal, everyday...
As was the case for the washhouse. We used to have communal washhouses,
Yes.
and they served the purpose that the post office, you tell me, is currently serving. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it did, because you
I'm
didn't
not
get too many really old grannies going into the washhouse.
No, you didn't get too many really old grannies going into the washhouse. That's why they all smelt. Of course you did. They went in because it was the place where they go. The washhouse provided the very thing that you're talking about, but because we no longer needed the washhouse, because all the products of the washhouse were available elsewhere, at home, for example, the washhouse died, and all the social bits of it had to go somewhere else. And it turns out they went to the post office. Well, OK, the post office as a business entity is now dead. It has nothing to offer in business terms. So let it die. And society will find other ways to rat on your children who are playing WAG and see whether Mabel's dead yet.
Right. Well, we'll have to agree to differ, but I think this is part and parcel of how our society is how can I say, degrading itself more and more, but because we're doing away with all these traditional things that we used to have. And I find it very, very sad.
All right, good on you. The vehicle exercise duty disc is something that you get at the post office. A VED, this is from Karen, a VED disc. If you don't have a renewal notice or the vehicle's logbook. OK, if you were pedantic, you could say you could get the tax disc at your local DVLA office, but they're not really that local. If I recall correctly, the one for Greater Manchester is located at Bellevue. It could be a pain for people to get there. I think you can also, I don't know, you'll have to tell me, but I think you can also get them via the postal system. It takes a little longer, but do correct me if I'm wrong. I will have you a bet for 50 grand, so that's out of it. I'll bet you 50 grand that if the post office went into private ownership, it would make a fortune without closing anything. Interesting. It's a typical dinosaur management that can't do anything other than close things. All right. Kevin, after the police officer was shot, the statement from the police was that there was no danger to the public. This exercise was being carried out within yards of the public highway and the railway track. You're not even supposed to shoot an air gun within 50 yards of the centre of the highway, let alone a firearm. I've no axe to grind, says Kevin, but can they stop telling lies to us? 0161228 2255. And Paul says, don't forget the bits that were either built or planned as the M66. Seeing as how we're being pedantic about what is the M60. Yes, of course. Let us not forget those. They are so important. Maureen in Hazel Grove. Hiya, Maureen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Right. I'd just like to say I've been in my local post office. I go each week for my pension because I don't have it paid into the bank. And I don't like to use the cash machines. So I get it, the cash. And I was behind a lady, and she was very elderly, and she was wanting a new passport because she hadn't had one for years. And I thought, and listening to your programme, they were very kind. They helped her to fill the form in and told her where to go and get the photo. It's in our local co-op, the post office. So they told her how to go and get a photograph taken. And then, to come back and they'd finish it off. Now, if the post office wasn't there, where else would she go? She seemed to have nobody else to help her.
Well, perhaps the person she's going on holiday with could have helped her.
Listening to a conversation to the lady, I'm 72, but I don't consider myself old. But she was a lot older. She was going to some wedding in France, and she hadn't had a passport for her because we're asking about her old one. And so she said, it's a long, long time since I had one. And so they were explaining things to her and filling the form in for her. And listening to you, and I thought to myself, well, if you're old on your own and you've got nobody to have, where else would you go to get a passport? I mean, you go to the post office to get the passport form.
Yes, but the passport form is available through a variety of outlets. It's not exclusive to the post office. Now, when you say...
Well, actually, I wouldn't know where else to go. I mean, I have a passport, so I always go to the post office.
All right, well, the passport office is a first port of call. I would get one from the passport office.
Well, I've always got mine at the post.
Well, yes, but you see, if we say the only place people know...
Alan, when people get older, we don't have the confidence, and also you don't have the ability to write the letters, to know how to write the letters.
Well, frankly, Maureen, if they haven't the ability to find out where to get the thing from, and if they haven't the ability to fill the form in, they shouldn't be travelling abroad anyway. They should be sat at home, getting medication and getting social work.
Well, she was able to walk to the post office.
Exactly.
Alan,
if she's able to walk and she's able to read and write, she could have found another way.
You're 60 next birthday, aren't you?
This is true, yes.
Yes, because I know I've listened to your programme.
And I suspect my marbles will still... Well, the what few I've got now will still be around for a week or two.
Oh, yes, but, you know, when you get older and you can get fitted, she was just saying I could just... a glimpse of the conversation, and it was, I don't know whether it was some grandson, great-grandson, what lived in, and she was going to France for this wedding. And when you're old, if you've got a relative and you invite you to a wedding abroad, and you're still able to walk about and walk on a plane, well, you'd still like to go, wouldn't you?
Of course you'd like to go. Whether that's worth costing something like £60,000 to the taxpayer, I'm not sure. Yes, I think you would like to go, but that doesn't mean the taxpayer has got to fund it.
And also, while I was there, I mean, I was sending a birthday present to one of my great nieces, and I had to post it, you know, in like a small parcel. So where else, if there's no post office, where would you send your parcels from?
Well, you would take them to the central post office. There would be fewer, but how often do you send a parcel, for crying out loud?
Well, I come from a big family, so I've got quite a lot of...
Okay, so you would find them...
I'm going to the post office to send... also, at our local post office, you can just go and buy euros and pay no commission, and I've got...
you can do that all over the place.
You know, people that... and I find it quite convenient.
Well, you see, Maureen, I haven't got a problem with the argument that they're convenient. I've got a problem that they're convenient and they're costing the taxpayer 300 million quid a year just for convenience. Just to keep a sub-postmaster in a job because he can't make his business work without it, because he's such a bad business person that he can't make a living as a shop, so he gets a wage off the taxpayer instead.
Oh, I understand that, those small places where... I mean, our post office is in the co-op itself.
Well, there you are then. It's in the co-op. That one's probably working. That one's probably making money.
And it's the only one we've got in the area, actually.
Well, yeah, but you see, Maureen, all I say is, and I understand that my question is, what is there available at a post office that isn't available anywhere else? And all you've offered me so far is they can spend 10 minutes on my tax wage talking to some wrinkly who wants to go to a wedding.
Well, yes, I can understand your point.
So if they want a social worker, get a social worker. If they want a shop, get a shop, but let the shop make money. Just
listening to the conversation. And I mean, another instance like today, I also called in the NatWest Bank, and there's a very elderly lady, and she didn't know how to use a cash machine. So apparently you can use them inside. I mean, I'm not...
Yes, you can. Most of them have them inside. I'm going to have to go, Maureen, but what I can tell you for nothing is if the NatWest Bank branch wasn't making money, they'd shut it like that.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission says an officer killed during firearms training in Manchester yesterday wasn't wearing protective clothing. 13 Manchester schools have been told to improve substantially, or they'll be closed, and 2 pubs in Oldham have been caught holding lock-ins so people can smoke inside. Manchester's weather, dry and sunny, highs of 20 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
A nice peaceful afternoon then on the M60 and M62. If you're on the M56 though, the Sharston link heading eastbound, so towards the M60, bridge maintenance work continues around junction 3 at Bagley, so anticipate narrow lanes and a speed restriction of 40 miles per hour as well, so slower than normal as you pass there. Elsewhere to Lowton Common, and expect delays on the East Lancs Road, that's the A580. The traffic lights there are still out just at the junction with the A579, so expect the odd queue. Call in hands-free if you see anything else, or you think you can update me on 01612 244 4951. I'm Chris Uni.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Ian Cheeseman.
Manchester United have suffered a double transfer blow. They've missed out on Cardiff's 17-year-old midfielder Aaron Ramsey, who's chosen to sign for Arsenal, and the Lyon forward Karim Benzema has admitted he'd rather go to Real Madrid than Old Trafford. As far as Ramsey's concerned, the Cardiff chairman Peter Ridsdale has admitted that the United deal would have suited him better because the player would have been loaned back to the Welsh club.
In the ideal world, I would have wished him to go there were he to leave. But also, I've got to be very careful because, obviously we have relationships with Arsenal Football Club and many others, and we want to do business with them in the future. So I tried to be even-handed, but made it clear that our Cardiff City's best solution would have been if he'd gone to Manchester United.
Real Madrid's president Ramon Caldron insists that United have no evidence that they've acted inappropriately in their pursuit of Cristiano Ronaldo. Wigan Athletic have opted not to sign Marcus Bent on a permanent deal from Charlton Athletic. The Latics boss Steve Bruce wants the Egyptian striker Amir Zaki instead. The former Manchester City midfielder Joey Barton, currently serving 6 months in jail for assault and affray, has been asked by his club Newcastle to take a huge pay cut or face the sack. Altrincham captain Darren Tinson has left the club to sign for his hometown team, Nantwich Town. The Robins, however, have signed a trio of players: striker Chris Denham from Droylsden, Hyde forward Dale Johnson and midfielder Anthony Danilek from Leek Town. They've all moved to Moss Lane. West Brom's Zoltan Gear is to join Fulham. It's thought he'd been a transfer target for Bolton Wanderers. Cricket's County Championship has started a fortnight's break while attention turns to the group stage of the 2020 Cup. But after impressive performances against Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire recently, Lancashire standing captain Luke Sutton believes they've finally found their championship form.
I definitely felt at Headingley that was an improvement, particularly with the bat. I think that's the biggest area we needed to make the improvement. And a little bit of energy in the field, I think we needed to do that. And this game reflected that. We were excellent, I thought, in many parts of the game. And I know the 2020 comes up now, but I think this should give us great confidence when the championship returns to keep going as we are.
Sales Andrew Sheridan, Charlie Hodgson and Richard Wigglesworth have been named in the England side, which includes 11 changes for Saturday's test against New Zealand in Auckland. Matthew Tate is on the bench, and they're in the first game of the first set of Andy Murray's matchup against Sebastian Grosjean in the Artois Championships at Queen's Club. Grosjean is serving, and they're at deuce.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxford.
Eamon and Diane.
So if you're now about to charge me to come into Manchester, I will find a way around that. I will stagger my day. If you can have some kind of flexible working arrangement, we'll all just knock our days back a little bit, and then between 9:30 and 11 it'll be mobbed.
Eamon and Diane and you.
I'm too depressed listening to you two with how my life's going to go down the pan completely.
And the thing is, Chris, nobody wants a builder who turns up at 10 o'clock.
That's going to be the other problem. Do we now change to work from 10 o'clock until 7 o'clock? Because I can't even come home.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
How great is that?
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. Brian says a police officer is killed and what follows are the inevitable so-called experts, including yourself, regarding the circumstances of the incident. Let's just wait. And as for Kevin's comment, read the distance from the highway, I presume he knows what the rest of the public know, and that's very little, including the distance from the highway from which the firearms were being discharged. Unless, of course, he's been there and measured it for himself. Well, Brian, there's a very valid point in that. But if we don't rattle the keyboards at the authorities when terrible things happen, we will never find anything out. And if they don't give us information, and equally importantly, if they give us wrong information, then I'm afraid we have to chase and challenge. It's getting on for 10 to 2. John in Swinton, hiya.
Hi, Alan.
What have you got?
This community charge, will the councillors have to pay it?
I would think so.
Will they be able to claim it back?
I don't know.
Because that's not going to be fair, is it?
Well, certainly...
we have to pay it for them.
Well, if they are paying it presently, well, they're not paying it presently, but if they are travelling by vehicle presently, I think they get an allowance, rather like many other people engaged upon their work, and they get an allowance. So if they have to pay the congestion charge, then quite possibly the allowance will include that.
Oh, that's not right, that. If they're coming in, they should have to pay it out of their money, not ours.
Why?
Well, they're putting it on, so they should pay it as well.
Well, yes, they should, but I suspect anybody engaged on his employment, so it doesn't apply to me because of the strange circumstances, but if the BBC, the congestion charge exists, and if the BBC says to one of our reporters, there's been a shooting in Rochdale, get up there immediately, and he gets in the BBC car and he drives to Rochdale, if it's going to cost him £5 to get there and come back, he's going to be well peed off. He or she are going to say, hang on a minute, because I'm only doing my job. Well,
if he's in a BBC car, it'll be charged to the BBC.
Well, I don't know how the charging will work, but the point...
It number plates, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. The point I'm making is that if an individual has to spend money in the pursuance of his employer's work, then it's only reasonable to expect the employer to fund that.
Oh, no. We don't pay for the councillors to go into Manchester and
well,
get
we do
charged.
if they're Manchester councillors.
Well, they should pay it out of their own.
Well, if a Rochdale councillor is coming to Manchester to buy a suit, he'll have to pay the charge.
I can believe that. I believe that when I see it.
Well, they have to pay it now. They don't get free parking, I promise you. If a Rochdale councillor or a Wigan councillor or an Ashton councillor comes to Manchester and has to park here, they have to pay. Now, of course, a Manchester councillor coming to Manchester to do his work won't have to pay. Why should he?
Oh, everybody else has to.
No,
why
everybody.
shouldn't he?
You seem to think that being a councillor is something that you should pay to be.
No.
No. Do you think it's something you should do and meet your own expenses doing?
No.
No.
Providing the fair expenses.
Well, they are fair.
Oh.
I find it extraordinary. I mean, you're either mad or just bitter.
Oh, a bit of both, I think.
Oh, well, as long as we've got both avenues covered. Good on you, John. 0161228 2255. The post office in Trafford Park is on the list. I go there a couple of times a day. There's always a queue at both counters and used by most businesses in the area for franked mail, parcels and the like. It would be a massive loss to businesses. Yeah, right. Alan, if the post office halved its fleet of little used vans that are parked up all day, they might have a chance of making profits one day. That's Dave in Warrington. The problem there, Dave, is all those stupid businesses that say, oh, if I don't get me mail at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll go bust. Frankly, if a business will go bust because it hasn't got its mail at 8 o'clock in the morning, it deserves to go bloody bust. But of course, they've tried to reduce the number of vans they use by having fewer deliveries, and everybody's up in arms. Frankly, I'm not bothered whether they get the gas bill at 8 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock when I get home. I'm not that bothered. It doesn't get bigger or smaller. It's just a bloody gas bill. You can get your car tax from the internet. Russ from Lee, another reason for shutting post offices. Andy in Knutsford. I don't know of any service other than the post office that allows me as a domestic customer to send a parcel. So perhaps this is the post office unique service. If there is an alternative, then I'd like to know of it, since the customer service as many post offices leaves much to be desired. Well, Andy in Knutsford, I promise you, if they closed all the post offices and allowed private business to do it, then there would be all sorts of places you could deposit your parcel to be sent to your friend in wherever the hell they seem to manage in many other countries. Bob in Saddleworth. Hiya, Bob.
Hi, Alan.
What have you got?
What I've got, it's the first time I've done this, so I'll just mention that.
Okay.
Be patient with me.
They're never patient with anyone. Go on.
Okay, yeah, so I've done this job for 15 years, retired. Yeah, finished March 2000.
Go on, I'm listening.
Okay. And I've done a little bit about it. Now, I've just walked in, believe it or believe it not, and my good lady, who's a big fan of yours, is reckoning that could you be talking a load of tripe or something? I don't know.
All things are possible, Bob.
All things are possible. Now then, so we know that what you do is you pose a question, look for solutions to it, and obviously for every problem there's a solution, and it makes good, entertaining radio. I know that. But I'm a guy who's been in there, done it, got the T-shirt. The problem isn't the sub-postmasters.
Oh, right, so you haven't told me yet what it is you've been doing for 50 years.
Sorry.
It's okay, you're working in a post office.
I was a humble sub-postmaster.
Okay, right, go on.
Now then, you've got a system in place here that is a post office, the Royal Mail, a parcel force, a licence to print money. Yeah?
I've no idea.
Well, I'm telling you.
Okay, fine.
You're listening, I'm talking. That's absolutely wonderful. This is new to me.
Yeah,
anyway,
well, it's new to me that they've got a licence to print money. I just wish they would and stop bothering us, but go on.
They have done. They
Oh,
did
right.
do years ago. They made £500 million a year. The government made a fortune out of it. Now the government is the sole shareholder. It's all our money that, unfortunately, is invested, but is not, how do I say, properly being managed. No, it's not sub-postmasters. Sub-postmasters are rock solid. They are humble guys like you and I who give people service. That's a sub-postmaster. It's his own business, right?
I'm aware.
He doesn't work for the post office. He is subcontracted.
But he gets paid?
He gets paid.
Thank you.
By results. Now then, the government is in a cleft stick, really. On the one hand, they want automation and they want the 21st century, technology-wise. On the other hand, the post office is used to the quill and pen. Yeah, get it the right way around. And what I'm saying is you bring in an organisation from the 19th century almost. I'm going in my 15 years up to the 21st century, and it's painful. There's a lot of casualties along the way. But there is, of course, yes, the old ears who want to collect the money at the pension from the post office. Now then, the government encourages them to have their pensions paid automatically because it's cheaper. It's dearer to employ somebody who gives them service and talks to them and listens to their problems and gets the gas fires fixed. And you wouldn't believe I could write a book on it, seriously. The things that...
Some people have done that, but go on.
Well, now then, if you'll point me in the right direction, we'll publish it. Seriously.
Well, what I said was some have already done it. I don't know whether there's room for another, but go on.
Well, I think there could be. Now, as I say, I've not listened to your programmes where you're at the moment. What I'm saying is you've got a sad situation here where public funds are not being properly invested. And it's a question of having people who understand at the sharp end what the difficulties are. Now, the public, the humble pensioner in particular, wants service. They want somewhere they can go. They want somewhere they can have a little natter. They want to talk about other issues in their lives. And a sub-postmaster is a government paid, as I say, on a subcontracted basis. And he looks after perhaps, I don't know how many, it could be 60, 70 government agencies, provides forms and goodness knows what else for all sorts of DVLAs and all sorts of things. So he's got to learn an awful lot of stuff. But at the same time, that here is this old dear or this old gentleman who comes to the counter and they want a bit of TLC. They want looking after. They want service. Now, the government, on the one hand, is encouraging them to have it paid on automation. Then they get older, find themselves getting a little bit isolated, perhaps, would enjoy a little walk.
Okay, we're going to run out of time. So what you're saying is that your value for money because of the social service you provide above and beyond the products you sell.
But not only that, you're so eloquent and you're so very good at summing things up. That is perfectly true what you've said. But believe me, it's a licence to print money. And unfortunately, The people at the helm are going on holidays and stuff, on fat salaries, and there's a major issue here, and it's a public issue, and I know it's in the public arena at the moment, but in and between that spectrum, there is the Royal Mail and the Post Office are winners if only they had people at the helm. If the people at the helm would listen to those at the sharp end.
Well, people tell me that about every single business. I even hear it said of the one in which I'm occupied. I've never heard anything other than that about businesses. The people, the salt of the earth at the bottom of the pyramid know all the answers, but the clowns at the top don't ever listen to them and don't ever implement them. And if that is true, then so be it. But what you haven't given me yet, and you're telling me that the post offices could make an absolute fortune if only it wasn't run by clowns. But what you haven't given me yet is that one special thing that we really ought to pay the money to keep. And I can't work out what it is, apart from passing old ladies on the head.
Repeat that last bit.
Passing old ladies on the head?
No, Pat, the earlier bit where I haven't told you yet.
You haven't told me yet the one thing that the post office has that's worth having that I can't get somewhere else.
Right. What's the one thing that it's got? What it's
well,
got?
You have a think about it and tell me tomorrow, because I've got to go, and rather like when it's closing time, I don't continue to pat the old people on the head after 5. I say, sorry, Mrs. Mabel, I know your son's died and you've not got your passport and you want to go to his funeral in Czechoslovakia, but it's 5 o'clock, so I'm shutting the hatch. But I will, of course, open tomorrow. I'm not open as long as a sub-post office, but then I don't have as many products. I will be open from 12 until 2 tomorrow. Ta-ra now.
Join the coffee club.